Looks like we have a couple people already on here. That is so
That is
awesome.
awesome.
All right, yeah. So we're
Great.
just giving people a couple more minutes here. We're getting things set up. It's my first time doing a joint live stream here, so I'm
Yeah,
so
and I actually
excited.
can't see who's on. It's not giving that to me.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so I know I'm seeing it over on Facebook. It looks like Amanda's here. We have Tanya. So hello, say
Let
hi. Let me know how you guys are doing.
me see if I'm in the right. That's so weird. Okay. So
This
on
is
my
me.
side
Thank you.
disappeared. You can see everyone, Jen, and I'm like, where are
Well,
they?
I was gonna say in the comments of Facebook, it's just it gave me this little thing of
Uh,
who's on here. Otherwise, if it doesn't tell me, I don't know either. So yeah, if I didn't mention you, or I don't know, Amanda said you're here, but let us
uh,
know who's
okay, so
here,
I
how
see
you're
a
feeling.
comment. Okay, Amanda. Okay, so I see Amanda. Me.
Me too.
I'm drinking my coffee right now. Yes.
Mine might be backwards, but Elmo loves mornings, even though it's almost afternoon here for me.
Okay, so I can see it now finally. I can see us on the live. So okay, so technology fun abounds this morning. Yeah, let's see. Elmo, what did that say? Elmo.
Elmo loves mornings. It
Oh,
might be
okay. So
backwards. I'm not sure how this is showing
I
up.
have my yellow submarine cup today.
Nice.
Yeah,
Is that reference to the Beatles or just a cup that you
it is.
have?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I've got the blue whale too, though. Yeah,
Nice.
I don't know. Anyway, so we're at 9:04. Do you want to give like one more minute and then we'll go ahead and
Yeah,
start?
yeah, just yeah, I'd love to hear kind of who else is here, who's jumping on.
Yeah,
Just say hi. Um, kind of, let us know what your maybe your initial thoughts are here of the conversation.
yeah.
Because I know we have some like pretty awesome things to kind of share here with you today. So I'd love to hear where you're at and kind of what you'd like to hear, and maybe even if you have some questions right now that you'd like answered.
Yeah, please post them in the chat here or in the actually it would be here on the Facebook side.
All right. So yeah, so whenever you're ready, I
Oh,
think I
yes,
think
and
we can
Jen, I
get
think
get
I'm gonna
going as
go ahead.
people jump on. Again, always ask
Yeah,
questions as they
yeah,
come up.
please do that. So first, Jen, thanks so much for this morning. Everyone, this is my colleague, Jen Tews, and Jen is an empowerment coach, and we were having this awesome conversation the other day. And she was sharing a little bit about her story with me, and we had been on a long time. We had kind of ended it with her starting to tell me a little bit about what was happening in her life, at the time. And she was like, yeah, my whole life was getting created for me. And I'm like, what, really? And I was like, I want to know more about that, but I want to share it. So actually, I'd love, Jen, if you would just jump in here and share a little bit about what was happening in your life, because our whole content today is from chaos to creation, and I think it's so appropriate, your stories.
Right. Yeah, and I think now is more a relevant time than any to really share this, because what I really learned is it's truly the small, I want to say even the innocent seeming choices that I was making
Mhm.
that really led up to the chaos in my life where it felt like my life was being created for me. It at the time, like I didn't even know that that was the choices that I was making, until I wound up in a place, I want to say about 7 years ago, where I came home from my corporate job at the time, and I was just done. Like I couldn't even speak to my husband. Just came home, dropped my bags down, and like I was done. Like I did not understand the point anymore. Like this cannot be. it, just feeling like everything was being taken from me. And I wasn't really finding like the joy and the peace that I really wanted to experience. And I'm like, do I really need to accept this? Is this seriously all that there is? And there was that moment there where it was very crystal clear that the place I was in, I actually considered worse than death. I wasn't alive. I wasn't dead either. And to me, it felt much worse. It's like, if
Mhm.
this is really what the next 30 years of my life is going to look like,
Mhm.
why?
Mhm.
And I didn't really know, I didn't have the answers at the time. I know that was part of my journey. Yoga helped me a great deal moving through that. But it was really asking those questions of like, what is going on? Like, why am I in this position? And it was very crystal clear at that time, this deep inner knowing that said, stop hiding. And of course, I'm sitting there, I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm right here.
Okay.
How am I hiding? Those were kind of the questions that I started to come up, like, how am I hiding? Because I was at least willing to go, okay, I clearly don't have the answers. I'm not in a space I want to be in. How am I hiding? And then that's where I started to really see that all the choices, all the things I've done in my life had some level of, this is what I should be doing. This is how things should go. Here's how things should look like. I should go to college after high school. I should get married. I should have a family in
Mhm.
that order. Here's the order of how things should go. I should have a job that I can make money and be super productive and have a role in society. And I think those are things that we all like. I still want that,
Right.
but how I chose to manifest that in my life wasn't really authentic to what I truly wanted to create.
Okay. So were you feeling like you were kind of being kind of led rather than
I wouldn't
you?
even say led, and that's where like these little choices were even so simple at first. It's like it's that point where you feel like this is the best choice. It's not
Okay.
something it's not necessarily something you're thoroughly and excited about. It's not something that going, yes, this is how I'm going to respond. This is the choice I want to make. It's like this is the best option. So this is what I'm going to do. So it was still a limiting of the choices. In
Okay.
order to be, a good daughter, in order to be a good wife, in order to be a good mother, these are the things that I have to do. So it was still the subtle layer of my choices being limited with this mask over the top of it as being giving and nurturing and
Oh,
supportive. You know what I mean? But like inside there was always a part of me going, that's not what I truly wanted. If I like, go back into the days of like, the mythical fairy tale, if I could wave my magic wand, here's
mhm.
what I wanted my life to be.
Okay.
And I even flashing back to when I was about, 8 years old, and I was, just playing around in, my childhood home and envisioning what my life would be. I didn't have like a perfect vision, but I knew it was a business of some sort. I knew I was a business woman.
Mhm.
It was me running the business. So it wasn't just I'm part of something else. It was my thing to create. And I would kind of dismiss that. How I started to try to manifest that was I would go into corporate America. I would become an accountant. I would get a job there. That's the field I would be working in. But it just wasn't ringing true. Like what I truly wanted to come from it wasn't really what was coming forward.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
there was lots of choices that again, very seemingly innocent, smart choices. People would agree, yes, after high school, go to college, get a good job. Like,
Yeah.
and nothing wrong with that. So I'm not saying there's any judgment on that path at all. But it came down to like, it wasn't keeping the peace within myself. It was more of, I was more focused on keeping the peace outward versus the peace on the inside. And one of the quotes that I had read earlier that just kind of came to me is like, if you try to keep the peace on the outside, you create a war within yourself. And at that time, that's not what I was aware that I was doing,
Mm-hmm.
because they seemed like very smart, very responsible decisions. Um, Again, I'm not saying they were right or wrong, but for me, it's not where I truly needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And where, that crack started to kind of show up for me, is when I actually had my first child. I ended up getting pregnant while I was still in college, before I graduated,
Mm-hmm.
before I was married. So like all of a sudden, it's like the correct order of things
Mm-hmm.
were kind of blown up.
Mm-hmm.
And then, from that space, it's like the initial feeling was, oh my gosh, this isn't what should have been happening. Like, this isn't how it's supposed to go. Judgment starting to come in, but taking a pause and going, okay, like, what do I get to create from this? It's not ideal, right? It's not necessarily something that anyone would want to do, but I think that was the first moment where I started to really step into my power and go, I have absolute choice here. I can choose exactly where I want my life to go. I can continue to live my life thinking that I made a mistake. This wasn't how things were supposed to go, continue to judge myself around that. Or I could step back and go, okay, what are the facts? You know, the father and I love each other. We're having a child. We both want to support the child. I think ultimately that's what anybody wants, regardless of how that's packaged up for
Mm-hmm.
anybody else. And then it's like, so where do I go from here? What do I want to create? What is the most important thing? And one of the things I noticed is when when things get kind of shuffled out of order, when things become unexpected and the normal is challenged, the first thing I saw people do was to try to bring things back more towards normal. Make it more acceptable,
Yeah.
make it safe, for other people. And it was always under this guise of, being responsible. So I remember having this conversation with my mom, and she's like, well, let's quick have a wedding, have you guys get married, even if it's just in the eyes, of God, and everything will be okay. And
Mm-hmm.
I just had this real clear moment where I just looked at her and I'm like, who is this wedding for? Like, is it for, me and my husband and my child to be to celebrate,
Mm-hmm.
and come together as a couple? Or
Mm-hmm.
is it to, fool everyone else to thinking that we did things in the right order?
Mm-hmm.
And, I still wanted a nice wedding. I still wanted to celebrate, us combining our lives. I mean, it was happening at that moment with or without a wedding
Mm-hmm.
ceremony. But I looked at her and I'm like, who are we trying to fool?
Mm-hmm.
Because God already knows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it's like that cat's already out of the bag.
Right.
And it's just starting to take a really firm stance for what I wanted, not for what was normally acceptable.
Yeah, exactly. It's like bringing it back to yourself as opposed to kind of externalizing it to
Right.
what the world is looking at or what others are looking at.
Right. Right. And I mean, yeah, there was a lot of questions, there was a lot of doubt that would come up, but I got to address it then, and it was, I think, at that moment where I had to get very clear on the next step. Like, I had to be very present.
Mm-hmm.
I have to keep building as I go. I can't look out, 5, 10 years, because I'm
Right.
not on like that so-called known trajectory. It's like I get to finally make stuff up
Mm-hmm.
as I go,
Mm-hmm.
which was oddly very freeing,
Okay.
which very comforting. And, there was definitely times where it felt uncomfortable. Different judgments, different concerns, from family members, from friends, all those different things. But ultimately, it's like I then had started having a sense I was in control.
Mm-hmm.
I could choose how I wanted my life to go, because I was now not only very clearly responsible for myself, but I was going to be responsible for a new little human. So,
Hmm.
what did I truly want to create?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm really curious, you know, because I know that, in your work that you do, with the yoga, you actually bring people into this point of creation.
Yes.
And, I can see here on the Facebook post, Amanda's question is, she says, well, I'm curious to hear more about how yoga, there's something blocking it now, about how yoga brings balance. And
Yeah.
that's you moved yourself out. Did you find it? I mean, was it the yoga that did that? I mean, how did you incorporate that? What happened there?
Yeah, so it was so interesting. So like back at this time when I was pregnant with Carter, I wasn't like doing what we normally know in Western culture as the yoga practice. I wasn't going
Okay.
to yoga classes,
Sure.
but I was doing yoga. I just did not know it at the time.
Yeah.
It was like you kind of said, coming back to that point of creation, the void, that
Hmm.
center point, getting really honest, like looking at, yes, these are other people's opinions, but this is what I know to be true. This is what I believe. And centering my choices around that, making it in alignment with that versus being influenced by other people's opinions. Even though, yes, they were very caring, I'm not saying they were wrong opinions,
Hmm.
but they just weren't for me. And it's like, I'm the one that knows myself the best.
Hmm.
And the practice of yoga really is learning how to unite yourself with that part of yourself. And a lot of that just takes your ability to come back into like your own central nervous system, really
Hmm.
noticing how your body's responding.
Hmm.
Now, the next level I took is when I actually started taking these yoga classes, and I was actually able to move my body, get a clearer sense of the choices I was making on how to move, how I wanted to approach things, how my body was responding to the choices that I had. Just brought in a whole nother layer of how to really gather that wisdom from what was around me. Because I think many of us are kind of going through life going, yes, we know, like, maybe it's our lower back. For me, it was always like my neck and my shoulders
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that hurt, or there's always like this chronic area. I mean, it might not be intense pain, but it's tension. It's something that definitely gathers your attention, and you don't
Right.
necessarily know why, or you don't know how, but it doesn't really feel great. And for me, with it being my neck and my shoulders, I didn't know why I was constantly carrying my stress there and holding patterns there. But the more
Hmm.
I did yoga, the more I started to not only feel more into my body and like build that practice of noticing how my body was responding. So when I was in like my everyday life, I was much more aware of when, I would start to tense through my neck and my shoulders, and just take that moment and go, huh, interesting. I
Hmm.
wonder why that is. Because we all tell ourselves these stories as to why this is.
Hmm.
Sometimes it might look like, well, I had no choice because I had to do this because it what was required of me. Or it's because this person did that and they shouldn't have.
Hmm.
Those are very like external reasons as to why
Yes.
you're reacting like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Totally.
And it's like, and it's good to be aware of like what you're telling yourself, but
Hmm.
then to come back into your body and go, what am I believing about that? It's always like, who cares if that's what they think I'm supposed to do?
Hmm.
Who
Hmm.
cares if that's how they react?
Hmm.
Like, that doesn't matter. Like, I'm in complete control over how I feel and how I respond.
Hmm.
But it's getting really clear and accepting that this is my response without making it right or wrong.
Yeah.
Which I think we also get into the habit of sometimes. It's like, oh, well, you can either say, like, maybe you align yourself with being more enlightened or a more compassionate person. I shouldn't be responding this way.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like, clearly your body is. So
Yeah.
what's there?
So, that's really interesting because, you know, I'm always talking about that connection, to the body. And, there's different ways to do that. And, to me, yoga is one of those ways that is very effective. And it's almost like, what I'm hearing you say, it's like, well, it's not really a judgment call on whether it's right or wrong or what have you, but it's about noticing what you're feeling in your body, and then noticing that, okay, so maybe I'm not really lined up with this out here,
Right.
and I need to make a shift that's right for me. Does that kind of address that? Do you feel
Yeah.
like I'm kind of does that sound right?
Yeah. So I mean, like high level, that's what it is. And I think there's even areas of our life where we can kind of clearly see that,
Mm-hmm.
but we still feel like we don't, like there's no choice. Like we still have to do it. And I know that's where I stayed stuck
Yeah.
for a long period of time, as in, especially in the corporate job, there were
Yeah.
times where I didn't feel valued or heard. I also didn't feel like I could really give the input that I knew I could, which was very frustrating. But also had a choice of whether I stayed there or not. Now,
Right.
at that time, it's like, well, the story, like, I need this for the money or blah, 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 whatever insert excuse here.
Mm-hmm.
But I was getting very aware of, okay, like, why am I responding this way? I started to use it kind of like a meditative practice, going, okay, why am I reacting this way?
Mm-hmm. That
You
makes
know,
sense.
is this the best fit for me?
Mm-hmm.
And I really started to notice part of the reason why I was carrying so much tension in my shoulders and my neck is because I was feeling the responsibility was all on me, but I couldn't vocalize.
Yeah.
I couldn't vocalize it. I couldn't speak it. So it's like I had to do all this stuff, but I had no say in how it was to be done. It's like that's how my body was responding. That's how,
Mm-hmm.
like, I was kind of conditioned to kind of view and see things
Mm-hmm.
and see it as from like my standpoint, as in I had to go along with it. I had to be, we use this term, the peacemaker, right? Like this is
Yeah.
this is the framework I have to operate in. I have to find this nice little way to maneuver through to get all this stuff to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Until I had a moment and go, wait a minute, like what is a peacemaker? Because this is definitely not creating peace within myself.
Mm-hmm.
So what would that look like? Like what do I truly want to do? you know
Okay.
yeah, and taking those moments to get honest, and um you know our bodies don't lie to us. Like there's this reaction, and it can come from a couple places. It can come from your conditioning, but it can also come from a place of your pure knowing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where we get, the yoga practice really helps you discern the difference between the two. Your conditioning, sometimes, we're seeing that actually right now on the world stage playing out as the fear response,
Mm-hmm.
because things are uncertain. Life is changing. We can't base our decisions off of the normal. So everyone's scrambling, trying to find the right way, right, to work with the situation, the what right way to
Mm-hmm.
respond.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems to be like it's going towards the group consensus, right? Whatever the largest mass amount of people believe in, that's what we're going to do, because we don't want to rock the boat. We don't want to make anyone feel bad. We want to, everyone wants to be responsible,
Mm-hmm.
but that's coming still from that fear place, as we have no choice. This is what we have to do. We have to sacrifice,
Mm-hmm.
to make this happen. We have to give up these things to make everybody safe, versus taking that moment, taking that pause and going, okay, yes, this is a brand new situation. I'm not saying anyone has like the one way to get through it,
Right.
but getting clear as to like what's important to you, what truly matters, what do you want in your life, what do
Mm-hmm.
you want to create, what message are you sharing?
Yeah. So it sounds to me like, you're really expressing that there is this this real opportunity for coming into your own truth, and what you're here to share a little bit. Is that so?
Yeah, so it's again, it's like it's that union.
Choices?
Yeah, it's that union of your true self. And what I find kind of interesting about like the yoga community right now is it's very focused on the physical postures.
Mm-hmm.
Very focused. It's closer to physical fitness, which
Mm-hmm.
it definitely has those aspects. So I don't want to minimize like those benefits of the practice as well. But really what actually like shifts the needle is coming into that void, coming into that center point, to your thoughts, to your feelings, what's going on inside. Are you truly in alignment with your actions? And I know when I first started yoga, like alignment, the best way I understood it is, stacking your bones in your joints, right? Like how can you like
Right.
physically align yourself?
Right.
Which, I mean, when you're talking about like emotionally and energetically and spiritually, it's very similar, except it's not quite as definable,
Mm-hmm.
which makes it a little bit more to kind of get into it and really hone in onto what is it that is best for you, what's in alignment for you. And when your actions are in alignment, it does not mean everyone's going to be happy with what you do or what you
Mm-hmm.
say, but you're going to know who you are. It's going to be in alignment with your core values. You're going
Mm-hmm.
to be willing to maybe take a tougher road than the path that you think you should take, because you know that's where you're meant to go.
Yeah. Yeah. I get that. I get that. So, what if someone is, you know, let's say they're just kind of like in this position of, you know what, I really want to understand this more. What would I do? How would I incorporate this um, to really start making those shifts for myself? How would I do that? How would I begin for
Right.
myself? Does that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the important part is just to begin. It doesn't necessarily matter how. I started by taking lunch hour yoga classes a few times a week while I
Mm-hmm,
was still in my corporate class.
mm-hmm,
Um, so not making it where it has to be this big thing, but just making this commitment to tap into yourself
mm-hmm,
and start noticing what opportunities are showing up for you,
mm-hmm,
where you're being pulled to, where you're being drawn to,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
because things are showing up in your life for a reason.
mm-hmm.
And the more I did yoga, the more I was able to start noticing when the opportunities came up in my life that I resonated with, because it was a very clear, it was kind
Mhm,
of like this like breath of fresh air.
mhm,
It's like, yes.
mhm.
And I'm not saying they were easy choices either.
Sure.
There was moments where like, doubt, or like, oh, I can't because XYZ, or this doesn't make sense, or that's silly, that's frivolous. But there was
Mhm,
this initial moment of, yes, this is it. And the more like you practice yoga, and I think that's why the physical postures are important at this moment, because we're bringing ourselves to that place where we can find that space
mhm,
that helps you create that space within your own body, which is
mhm,
why I feel like having a physical practice is so
mhm,
important.
mhm,
But also noting that it has nothing to do with the postures you're in. It has nothing to do with your shape. It has nothing to do with how strong you are or how flexible you think you are.
mhm,
Those are all just like things that are going on.
mhm.
I
Yeah.
remember my first yoga practice. I'm going around. I think I was watching people more in the room than I was actually doing yoga, because I wasn't sure what the postures were, what they were called. All I knew is at the end of practice, I was sweaty and I hurt, but I felt awesome.
Yeah. 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 So, how would you describe, because, you have really, grown, beyond, that person that you described in the beginning. And you know, what about someone who is like for example, someone who is maybe inside of a business that they're working with right now, maybe they're a little stuck in it, or they have some of this practice in place. How do you see that, you know, moving forward, and how it, do you have an opinion on that? On, you know, kind of, you know, when you're kind of maybe in the middle of this, maybe not at the beginning, but you're kind of, you know, maybe already involved in things, and, you know,
Yeah.
maybe practicing yoga, or you have a practice in place, but how that looks, and how that maybe amplifies
Okay,
what
like
someone is.
how, yeah, how to bring it kind of to the next level and when you kind of know you're
Yeah,
there.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that starts showing up when, like for me, it was like I didn't care what I looked like on the mat. The practice was for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it was focused more on how the poses felt in my body versus
Mm-hmm.
how maybe what I thought I looked like to other people or what I looked like in the mirror.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
As long as I thought I looked awesome, then that's
Yeah.
all that matters, whether I could actually
Yeah.
like have a physical cue on that back or not.
Yeah.
Um, but it was really taking that point and getting honest, why am I doing this?
Right.
Like what is this for? Like I'm not here to impress anybody else. I just need a moment to center and recalibrate because initially, like when I was working in the corporate world, a lot of my life wasn't calibrated around what was in alignment for me.
Mm-hmm.
So it created a lot of stress. It created a lot of friction, a lot of tension. So I needed at first that moment where I could kind of decompress.
Mm-hmm.
But then it started to kind of bring my awareness towards, using yoga as an addiction versus as a tool for awakening. Because I could have continued to stay in my 9 to 5 job. I could have continued to, I probably had to add like a couple more yoga sessions to my day, just to kind of like unwind and open up that stress lever. But the first thing that started to come to me is like, okay, like this isn't working. Like just being very honest, going, I'm not saying I was even doing anything wrong, just this
Mm-hmm.
this wasn't working. This wasn't what
Yeah.
I wanted.
Yeah.
And then taking the step beyond that and going, okay, so how can I get what I want? And for me, like at that point in time, that was a very scary question to ask.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what do I want? And actually being willing to go for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah. I get that. I think we all kind of encounter those scary aspects, and it is like, you know, making that choice that honors, you know, who you truly are, and the difference that you want to make, you know, not only for yourself, but, you know, ultimately that impacts others around you greatly. It allows
Right.
you to kind of, it allows you to serve them on a
Yeah.
much higher level.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
and for me, like peace and harmony was always very important to me.
Hmm.
That was always something I always wanted.
Hmm.
And how initially, the me before tried to do that is I tried to create peace on the outside,
Hmm.
but I wasn't creating peace within myself. And I know there's a lot of women that feel the same way. There's things that is just like this burr under your saddle. Things just don't feel settled. It's
Yeah.
like it's like, is this really all there is? Is like, do I really need to keep making this compromise? I'm tired of this situation. And I completely get that it's like you're sitting in there and you're not seeing a way out. But
Mm.
I want you to know that doesn't mean that there isn't.
Yeah.
There
Exactly.
isn't there isn't a way out, and there's no logical way for me to tell you how to get there other than to start creating that peace within yourself.
Hmm.
And I know like a lot of that is centered towards self-care,
Hmm.
as around like making yourself priority, seeing yourself as valuable, seeing your choices and truly seeing that you have a choice, even in the moments where you feel like you don't, even in the
Hmm.
moments where you feel like you have to start to compromise
Hmm.
and play along to whatever label you want to insert there, be the good mom, wife, mother, coworker, employee, boss, whatever, like whatever label you want to put there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just take a pause and go, okay, what really matters to me right now?
Yeah.
Like what are your values? What do you want to create?
Mm-hmm.
Because you have a choice, and the more you compromise and kind of start creating that disconnection in yourself, whether it's numbing out, disconnecting from like your physical sensations. And in the beginning, yes, like I had used yoga for that practice, to like allow myself that release valve to kind of let the lever off so I can go back and fill myself back up with stress.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So,
Right.
it's what I want to make it really clear when I'm saying addiction, I'm not saying whether whatever you're doing is good or bad, because yes, yoga had some very wonderful benefits. However, it was a coping mechanism at first of mine
Mm-hmm.
to stay someplace that wasn't meant for me.
Mm-hmm.
But the more I practiced yoga, the more I started to realize that, hey, like I'm using yoga to help sustain me someplace I don't want to be. Maybe I don't have to be here.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't have to be here, where should I be? And I know like that is very scary. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I'll even like bring it back to like what's happening right now, in the world with the worldwide, corona pandemic that's going around.
Mm-hmm.
It's everything is so new. If I'm not supposed to be here, where am I supposed to be? If the old system is no longer working, what is
Mm-hmm.
that new system going to look like?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What is my life going to look like?
Mm-hmm.
And the things that I had relied on in the past, I can no longer rely on.
Mm-hmm.
And your nervous system has a tendency either to respond to that, you know, you can go into the fight and flight response, which I think a lot of people are at the moment because we're just trying to make sense of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can go in, the opposite direction of what we've been told, because we've been kind of told there's these two options, either you fight or flight, fight, or you flee, you hide, you pretend there's nothing going on, or you ignore the situation, or you wait for things to come back to normal because eventually this whole thing will blow over, no big deal, whatever. Well, kind of ignoring the situation. But there's also like this third point, and I kind of call it like this bottleneck moment. It's that freeze response where you have to do something, but you don't know what to do. You can't fight whatever this is, right? Like we
Yeah.
can't punch the coronavirus. You can't see it, right?
Yeah.
So you're like, what do you do? It's like this invisible boogeyman, that's been created that we don't know how to handle with. So now we're all kind of like in this freeze response.
Mm-hmm.
And we're starting to kind of see what we do when we're in that in between state. Do you make choices, for yourself?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you let yourself be led? Are you willing to take those bold choices, even if they scare you, to create the life that you want? Because freeze isn't, they use it to me, like how it's been described in the past is like this state of where like you don't know what you want, you don't know what's going on, like you're stuck, right? Like the stuckness.
Mm-hmm.
Which, yes, it might feel like that at first because it's like everything is coming into you. It's like, the two options you've been given aren't right.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to find this other option, this other way through. So if we start actually recognizing that, like we're coming into a void, like we know
Yeah.
we can't fight it, we know we can't run away from it. What action are we actually going to take?
Yeah.
How are we going to move forward?
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. So I know that you have your own website, and you
Yeah.
have a full program that you share with people that are, in this aspect of moving from that stuck position into their creativity. Do you want to share a little bit about that, and um, maybe put some info. I don't know if you want to drop it in here or we could post it after. I think you have a little goodie or something for people here in this group. And
Yeah, so I just dropped the name of my website into the Facebook comments here.
okay, awesome.
So yeah, so like if you guys want to go in and check that out, that's my website. Um, I really use yoga as a tool for stepping into your empowerment. And I'd love to invite like your community to start joining me for weekly yoga classes. I just launched my online yoga studio
Okay.
because I know like a lot of places are shutting down. Like you can't gather in community at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
I know the yoga studios I've been teaching at locally, same thing. They've been forced with, going virtual, which,
Right.
it's great that you have that amount of flexibility.
Right.
So I decided to actually bring my offering also virtually online
Mhm.
as well, where, you can actually get into your body, experience that with, a couple classes a week, come
Right.
in. Yeah. And, and because like, I love your community and I think this is so important, and I'll drop a link here in a moment. But I also want to offer you guys a discount on these classes.
Oh,
Yeah. So
great.
like it's 15% discount joining in. Full price classes are $10. It's very, very nominal, but it's starting to create that space in your body,
Right.
that
Right.
practice. And I designed it very purposely to kind of integrate not only the masculine, yang, active side of the practice, but
Mm-hmm.
also the yin, the feminine, the nurturing, the more passive way of, allowing this stuff to work through your body. So
Mm-hmm.
that way, like you have both aspects of the practice and start to really see the benefits, because I know we tend to get stuck on like there's one way of doing things.
Yeah.
There's usually probably one way you like doing things. I mean, I know I definitely have
Yeah.
preferences too, right? Like I'm
Yeah.
not saying
Yeah.
don't have
Yeah.
preferences, but
Yeah.
there are benefits to both, and that's why I really wanted to incorporate both sections of it.
Mhm.
As well as if anyone wants to chat with me, I'd also love to offer a free coaching call to anyone. So that way I can help you like
Great.
design a practice, for yourself, what I can kind of see that you can create, what you need. So that way you can tap more into your body and what you truly want.
That's that's amazing. I love that, Jen. I love that, Jen. Thank you so much for, making that available to this community. And, those of you that see this, I'd encourage you to take Jen up, on these offers because, I do myself practice yoga, and I do other things. And um, I firmly believe that the the way to healing is to connect to your physical body, and yoga is a way to do that. And Jen, I just you have no idea how much I appreciate you being willing to be so vulnerable and share so much about your life, here on this page, here with this group. And is there anything else that you would like to share before we start to, maybe close out? I'm going to take a look and see if there's any questions, specific questions before we do that. But
Okay.
um,
Yeah. So, and I've really started to see life as a journey.
mhm.
Every time like I find like I feel like things are getting out of control or things are getting chaotic, the
Yeah,
first thing I notice is I start having judgments, right?
yeah,
So start just noticing how you react. I start to get a little bit judgy about what's going on, and then
yeah.
I get kind of what I'll say rebellious.
Okay, yeah, that's a good word.
Which I mean, definitely, it's like it's okay to have like your own response, but taking a moment and going, okay, like where is this coming from?
Mm-hmm.
And being willing to make stuff up. So I'll just share with everyone in your community, because I don't know if everyone necessarily knows, but I'm pregnant now with my second
Yeah,
little boy.
yeah.
Um, was a complete surprise. This wasn't part, of the plan.
Mhm.
So late last year, I was in this moment of going, what I thought my life was going to look like completely changed overnight. And I think a lot of people can relate to that right now, where it's like what they
Yeah,
thought was going to happen seemed to completely change overnight, or at least definitely within the last, a week or two. Like just a
sure.
very fast, sudden shift. Sometimes I refer to it as it feels like the rug has just been pulled out from underneath you. It's
Mhm.
like, what did I do wrong? I can't believe this is happening. Oh my, like, what am I going to do? Like all these
Mhm.
questions, like all these things kind of like start coming up. But it's like, what's really beautiful about that is like, it actually gives you this space of, it's like, okay, just make stuff up. And
Mhm.
that's what I've always constantly told my first son. And part of the reason why it was such a surprise is my first son is now 17 years. So
Oh,
he'll actually be 18 at the end of this month. And we're going,
okay.
sending him off, to his life, to, build his own career, his own like love and passion that he has in life. And, we're thinking, okay, like, well, we'll have us time again, was was the initial thought. We even kind of joked around it because like I was 19 when I had my first son,
Right.
and we didn't start living together until after he was born. So there really wasn't just me and my husband time.
Yeah.
It was like, we were living with our families, going to school, to living with each other and having a kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like, oh, like one of the great things is it's like we'll be like 38, and then we'll have our fun time, that'll kind of be like us. But life definitely has a plan of its own,
Yeah.
and it doesn't necessarily have to be like what you're expecting. And it's okay if like it feels like sometimes the rug gets pulled out from under you, and it feels like things are just kind of like crashing and burning.
Mhm.
Like that is fine. I
Mm.
completely understand why it doesn't feel fine.
Yeah.
um but coming back to going, okay, there's something bigger working here. And the more I step into my empower, the more I allow myself to be empowered with the choices I make,
Mhm.
the less those like rug pulling out from underneath me moments terrify me. The quicker I'm able to come back to center, the quicker I'm able to really choose what it is that
Mhm.
I want to do. And, part of the reason why I think yoga is so important and impactful for that, kind of like you said with healing, it's like it's really important to connect with your body. But the reason for that is I know like a lot of times in society, like we've been told a lot about mindset, right? Mindset is key, which
Mhm.
mindset is very important. The whole phrase of mind over matter. But your matter also has a say in how you're responding.
That's
So there's been a lot of research, especially with the vagus nerve, that actually has shown that your body is sending 80% of its information from your body to your brain. Only
Mhm.
20% of the information is going from your brain to your body. And I'll just stop back to like what we know from diet culture, just because I think like as women we've been completely inundated with how to kind of work with that. We
Yeah.
always hear about the 80-20 rule, right?
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
want to see lasting results, you focus on what you do 80% of the time. So if like 80% of that response is coming from your body, like you said, you really want to be connected with that and really understand what's going on, because mindset alone will not help you move through it.
Yeah.
Mindset alone will not create a lasting change.
Yeah. I love
So yeah, I mean, you say even
I love that.
hypothetically,
I
you have a
feel
crystal
I
clear
feel like
mind.
I feel like we have to like drop that in somewhere. Mindset alone is not enough to create change. So, we got to write that down.
Yeah, I'll write that down
That-
real quick.
yeah, write that down because that is so important. That is
Yeah,
so important. And I think that sentence right there really that says volumes, honestly.
yeah,
That says volumes
right. Well,
about the importance.
Yeah, and like we all have dirty minds. Like I'm not going to say my mind is crystal clear, you're right? Because we all have
Sure.
doubts, we have moments of
Yeah.
fear.
We're
You know,
human.
right? We're human beings. I mean, like even very like enlightened, powerful people still have these moments. They just know how to work with them.
Yeah.
You know, so, but let's even say like let's pretend we're not humans and like we have this crystal clear, like beautiful mind.
Hmm.
You know, even bringing it to that extreme, coming
Yeah.
back to this 80-20 rule, 20%, 100% clear mind is not going to change your physical reaction. That's not, it's not going to be enough to move
Hmm.
that needle. So we really need to bring both of them together. So I want to be clear, I'm not saying don't work on mindset, because yes, mindset is important as well.
Sure.
But it's also coming into your body and really noticing what is going on there, how you're
Yep.
physically reacting, because a lot of the things that we're reacting to, we've been programmed to respond. This is how we've seen other people respond. Here's how we've learned to understand the world around us.
Yeah.
And you know, it may be beneficial, it may not be beneficial, you know, and that's what we really get to decide. Like as we grow and as we evolve, like what is truly ours? What do we really truly need to keep? And really starting to see those patterns in our life that aren't serving.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. I love that, Jen. I feel wonderful having had, this conversation. It's so, it's so affirming. And I think for everyone that's been able to tune in, and if you're going to be watching, some of you are going to be tuning into this after the fact. And make sure that you reach out to Jen with, any of these questions. You can reach her through me. You can reach her directly, she's dropped a link in here.
Yeah.
And um, I want to thank everyone for, participating in this today. And Jen, I especially want to thank you for coming on here today with me.
Yeah. Well, thank you for inviting me. This was a great conversation.
You're
And
so welcome. You're so
yeah,
welcome. I actually sense another conversation coming on at some point because I can tell there's like more. So thank you so much. And is there do you feel complete?
I feel complete. I think, you know, I think
Right.
this gives the people a lot to kind of, you know, chew on. And, you know, I would say even if you just have these inklings, you know, that there's something more, or this sounds like
Yeah.
something that you want to do, like don't hesitate, don't wait.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what I learned is like I used to hesitate and wait. Like, well, I want proof this is the right way, or I want permission that this is the right way, or I want some outer circumstance to change
Yeah.
before I do this. But what happens is nothing is going to change until you come to that center point and make that decision for you.
Yeah.
And just, I want everyone to realize that any decision you make to do that, like how courageous that truly is. Because I
Yes.
know that is not easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, no,
Thank
thank
you
you,
so much.
Rebecca.
That's it's a blessing to have you here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you for having me. Yeah, we definitely need to do this again.
I think